Along with the announcement of the Nintendo Switch 2, we also got a sneak peek at what the next installment of Mario Kart will look like on Nintendo's new and improved system. That means Mario Kart 8's long tenure is finally coming to a close in the near months. Mario Kart 8 has been a game with quite a rich history, first debuting on the Wii U in May of 2014. Soon after, the game was expanded slightly with some DLC that gave fans 8 new tracks and unique new characters. Carrying on its legacy, and with the hot release of the Nintendo Switch, Mario Kart 8 made its reappearance, but this time amplified to the max. Racers were now allowed 2 items, the infamous fire hopping technique was patched, and the game saw a massive expansion of content that made it worthy of being called Deluxe. Due to the explosive sales of the Nintendo Switch, this was the game to buy, especially during the early days when the Switch did not have many games in its library yet. Mario Kart in general is a classic among casual and pro gamers alike, stretching from families and friend groups all the way to sweats. And all of that played into the game's sky-high sales. As of this recording, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has sold 67 million copies worldwide. That prompted Nintendo, despite fan anticipation of a brand new Mario Kart title, to launch the Booster Course Pass in 2022. This was genius of them. The game is still selling at ridiculous numbers today, as it is a great complement to any new Switch that is bought. This DLC would be distributed through 6 different waves, accounting for a total of 48 new tracks and 8 new characters. They also applied some balance patches to the existing carts, changing the meta from this to this. But Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, wow. A visually stunning game with now 96 tracks and 48 playable characters. This surely is the Smash Ultimate to all Mario Karts. How will Nintendo even come close to topping it come later this year when the new Mario Kart is released? Well, they already did. 17 years ago. Meet Mario Kart Wii, released in 2008 and what I consider the pinnacle of the Mario Kart series. You see, quantity isn't everything. What Mario Kart Wii lacks in quantity respective to 8 Deluxe, it makes up for in so many other factors which will be comparison points discussed in this video. So let me start with a biggie, items. Items are, and always have been, a crucial element to the Mario Kart series. Typically with every new installment of Mario Kart, new items are added while some items are omitted. Now, the exclusive items in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe just don't do it for me, and I'll go through each one and explain why. Firstly is the coin item. I feel like this is just a waste of an item slot. I already don't like the coin gimmick, as you'll hear later, but I wish they just stayed as items you collect on the track rather than its own individual item. First place has a 70% chance to pull a coin from an item box, which is obnoxiously high. It's not fair that the chances of pulling a protection item in first is that low, considering the abundance of red shells in this game that you are not protected against. Secondly, let's talk about the Fire Flower. I really don't like this item, and just for one reason. It's very spammable. The fact that a racer, typically in the middle of the pack, can unleash a fury of projectiles is just not fun or strategical. If they limited the amount of fireballs you get, that would be an improvement, but that doesn't take away from its easy to spam nature. It's a very annoying item I wish will stay in this game and not make a reappearance in the future. Third is the Boomerang Flower, similar to the Fire Flower, but better. I feel neutral about this one, but I guess my main problem with it is there already is enough projectile items, so the addition of this item on top of the Fire Flower, Bomb-Omb, Green Shell, and Red Shell feels a little overwhelming. After that, we got another item I don't like, which is the Piranha Plant. It's an item that is again pretty spammable, and it can be a nuisance in the middle of the pack. I wish it allowed you to go off-road like the Mega Mushroom in Wii, but I feel as if the Mega Mushroom is a much better middle-of-the-pack choice than the Piranha Plant. The next item appears in both Wii and 8 Deluxe, but behaves differently in that game. That is the Triple Bananas. I don't really like the change they made. In Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 7, the 3 bananas trailed behind you, giving you 3 sure shields against any projectiles. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, they revolve around you like how green and red shells do. This kinda defeats the purpose of the item because now you're not guaranteed protection after you lose just one of your bananas. Instead, you have to precisely drop a banana the moment before a projectile hits you just to guarantee you don't get hit. I don't know why they made this change, but the triple banana was always much more beneficial when it trailed behind you. Now it's just a significantly worse triple green shell. The triple mushrooms do the same thing as well, they revolve around you. I don't know why, but in every other Mario Kart they were just in your inventory, but in 8 Deluxe, they also revolve around you, which allows other players to use them for a short boost. Weird decision, but not the end of the world. I'm not going to comment much on the last 2 items because I think the Super Horn is a great addition and I don't really see the use in having the Crazy 8, but allow me to move on to Wii's exclusives and explain why I think they did it right with these items. Firstly, yes, I think the Thundercloud sucks. Don't worry, it's the only one I really don't understand the point of. Instead of punishing you, they should have made it where you get a Mega Mushroom boost or some similar upgrade at the end, which would incentivize other racers to bump into you and try to steal it, placing a huge target on your back. But removing it would have also been nice. Moving on, let's talk about the fake item box, or FIB for short. Many people complain about this item because it doesn't provide protection from shells, and the fact that nobody will ever be fooled by its look. But they're using it wrong. The main purpose of it is much more strategic than straightforward. The FIB has a massive hitbox, meaning it is a perfect item for trapping racers around tight corners. There are many sharp turns in Mario Kart, and placing one right after a blind turn can really screw up the racer behind you. It's a really useful item in first when you want to try to expand your lead. Secondly is another item that is misunderstood, the POW block. I really wish they brought this one back. Many people don't see the use of it, as it just spins out the racers in front of you. However, if used correctly, it's something that can be pretty destructive. Yes, it spins out the people in front of you, but also disarms them. You can use the POW block to get rid of any potential mushrooms people may be saving for a shortcut, or any power items people will try to dodge a shock with. It's also great around corners. Using a POW block right before someone takes a sharp turn is huge, as they get spun out into the wall and lose all of their speed. So it's a great item if a large group of racers are about to approach a turn, because they can lose a lot of time if they spin out. The last great item is the Mega Mushroom. It's a power item that allows you to cut off-road, squish other racers, and drive at top speed all the time. It's a fun item that isn't too broken because of its limited speed boost, but can be very useful in tight areas with many racers. It also can dodge a shock, which will revert you back to normal size, so be careful while going in the off-road. I want to compare one common item that is present in both games, the red shell. It's known that the red shell in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is very smart and almost guaranteed to reach the racer in front of you. Meanwhile, in Mario Kart Wii, it cracks not even a second after it's thrown. That's because in Wii, it tries to take the shortest route to the targeted racer, meaning you'll try to travel through other objects if that's the shortest distance. Meanwhile, in 8 Deluxe, it takes the more official route, staying in the middle of the road until it reaches the player, which helps it avoid braking around tight turns. I wish there was a happy medium, because in Wii, the red shell is almost rendered useless unless your target is 3 feet in front of you, but in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it almost feels too broken to the point where it shouldn't be able to travel as far as it could. I mean, it can travel in the air and through cannons, for heaven's sake. If I had to choose, I would choose the Wii version because I think less red shells are better for the game. Mario Kart 8 feels so oversaturated with red shells to the point where I feel like there's a million in play. It's just not fun when you're constantly getting hit, and the fact that people can pull 4 red shells at once is not really fair. Still sticking with the topic of items, let's move on to how items are selected in the roulette. Not many people know this, but in Mario Kart Wii, items are given to you based on your placement, while in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, items are selected based on your distance from first. That's why you've seen those clips of people pulling stars and triple mushrooms in second. And that was the worst possible decision they made. Many people think it's fair and equitable to prevent the rich from getting first from breaking too far away, but this only plays into the oversaturation problem in this game. Think of it logically. If everyone is getting power items, how does anyone catch up with each other? And even worse, think of the bottom spots. How do they catch up with the rest of the pack when second and third place is also pulling stars and mushrooms just like them? It just leads to a lot of stagnation, which doesn't benefit those in bottom positions. If everyone has stars, mushrooms, and bullets, doesn't that essentially neutralize their effects, making them useless? In Mario Kart Wii, the bottom positions can actually catch up with the rest of the racers because those items are exclusive to them, so only they can do the shortcuts and get the speed boosts. If you want to catch up with first in Mario Kart Wii, just drive well, or maybe hope someone pulls a blue shell. Here's another thing, it's so stupid how multiple bullets and shocks can be in play at once. Those are supposed to be items that are very rare and reserved to one player at a time. In Mario Kart Wii, there is a 30-second cooldown after a shock is used, meaning it won't appear in the roulette for that amount of time. But in Mario Kart 8, you can have 3 bullets go at once and 2 shocks happen simultaneously. The fact that you have double items does not help out with this, rather makes it 2 times worse. Sometimes the game feels virtually unplayable because I can't go 5 seconds without getting hit because of the amount of items in play from every player. If they just toned down the amount of items there are in the game, it would make a huge difference. That's why I like Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, because you only have 1 item slot, so it felt a little more tame compared to its successor. Items are important to the game, don't get me wrong, but racing is as well. Players don't want to get hit by something every second of the race just because of the sheer amount of items everyone is pulling. It just makes the whole experience frustrating and less enjoyable to play. Mario Kart Wii is perfect because items have a huge effect on the race, but are not the end-all be-all of the game. You actually need to know how to drive the track in order to place well. It feels balanced and refreshing, and like you have more control over your race rather than it being abruptly ended by a single event. Sure, getting Mario Karted happens in every installment of the series, but it's far more frequent and devastating in 8 Deluxe than Wii or ever before. I want to build off my last point I made about how Mario Kart Wii leans more towards driving than 8 Deluxe does. That's something key that I learned playing both games. If you want to have a good time playing a racing game with a lot of twists and gimmicks, you'll like 8 Deluxe. But if you're the guy who really wants to master the tracks, grind out the shortcuts, and really optimize your driving, you'll lean towards Mario Kart Wii. So I'll just say this, Mario Kart Wii is much more skill dependent than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is. Sure, luck is a huge factor in both games, but it feels more emphasized in 8 Deluxe. Due to the overwhelming presence of items in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, there are a lot more variables that can affect your race than there are in Mario Kart Wii. When I play races in Mario Kart Wii, the outcome of the race is typically determined by how I drove all 3 laps. If I took bad lines, missed shortcuts or whatever, that affected my placement and then would affect which items I was able to pull and use. When I look at the minimap and see the person with 9000 VR with a large breakaway, it's because they know the track. They took the valuable shortcuts and drove the track optimally. And I'm of course not saying that's not the case in 8 Deluxe, because it is. The better players typically do better, but it's much more apparent and prominent in Mario Kart Wii. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe feels a lot more equitable of a game, while Mario Kart Wii has a vaster disparity. Again, this all boils down to how Mario Kart 8 Deluxe focuses more on item usage, which in turn provides a more diverse set of outcomes at the end of races among all levels of players. While in Mario Kart Wii it is more skill dependent, which provides a narrower set of outcomes at the end of races among all levels of players. The best players are going to score top spots most, if not all, the time. Let's talk more about driving. It is quite apparent that driving is much more different in Mario Kart Wii than in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Of course, every new edition of the series has a slightly different feel to it, which is the key factor that distinguishes them from each other. I personally like the mechanics in Mario Kart Wii more than 8 Deluxe. It's hard to describe, but I'll try my best to do so. The best way to start is to describe the different types of drift for those who are not aware. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, most vehicles have outside drift, which means your kart turns wider and fishtails around a turn. There also exists inward drift, which essentially means your vehicle will initially turn outside, but then shift to inside drift, allowing you to take corners tighter. But only in Mario Kart Wii they included something called inside drift, which is exclusive to about half of the bikes, and essentially allows you to take turns how you would in real life. This type of turn does not force you in the opposite direction of where you tilted the joystick, but instead is a type of drift that allows you to take corners much tighter. The reason why it has only been in Mario Kart Wii is because it is incredibly broken. Think of it logically. Which path gets around a corner quicker? This or this? You're able to take turns as tight as you want, which saves so much time compared to the outside drifting vehicles. The only downside of these vehicles is they cannot produce a longer orange mini turbo since they are bikes, but being able to take turns almost twice as fast more than makes up for it. This is why in Mario Kart Wii, bikes rule the game, as karts are almost completely obsolete due to their inferior drifting method. Now, I know this isn't all relevant to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe since it does not have this style of drift in the game, but the foundation of my argument here is just the difference between how the two games control. Due to the inclusion of inside drift, Mario Kart Wii feels much more natural and like you have significantly more control over your vehicle. The turning more mimics how you would turn if you're driving a car, as you're not fishtailing when turning onto another street, but rather taking the turn at a more angular approach. When I play Mario Kart Wii, I feel like I have so much more control over my bike, and I'm able to make those quick corrections with my driving or take those last-minute turns. You don't have to turn as early as you have to with outside drift, therefore you can maximize your top speed for a little bit longer on straightaways. All of this contributes to a more positive feeling with the mechanics of the game and makes me feel more responsible for my driving than in 8 Deluxe. While I'm not saying the controls or drifting in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe are bad, they just feel more stiff and less open than they do in Wii, restricting me to drive a specific way. Even comparing the outside drifting carts in Mario Kart Wii to the ones in 8 Deluxe, it feels like I have more control over the ones in Wii and that my movements are more sensitive and aligned with how far I aim the joystick. The two games also have a completely different style of play with approaching races. In Mario Kart Wii, you wheelie on straightaways to reach top speed and take turns as tight as possible, a very linear and typical way of playing a racing game. However, in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the strategy is to go for coins. Your coin total adjusts how fast your kart can go, with 10 coins giving you about a 6.5% increase in your top speed. Because of that, it is very crucial to make sure your coin total is as high as possible. So it is advised that you drive out of your way to collect coins so you can in turn drive faster in the long run. It's always been weird to me that you have to take awkward and weird routes just to collect coins instead of taking the best lines and driving the track as fast as possible. I don't know, I never really liked the coin mechanic, and I think Mario Kart was better without it. I really hope coins don't make a reappearance in the next game, but other than coins, the most important stat in the game is not your speed, weight, or handling, but rather your mini turbo. That is because mini turbos are very powerful in 8 Deluxe, and if you crank out enough of them, you're outspeeding even the fastest cars in the game, so it is also optimal to produce as many mini turbos as possible so you can go as fast as you can. That's where the technique of snaking comes in, which is the method of drifting back and forth to chain mini turbos on straightaways. Now, snaking isn't faster on all combos in 8 Deluxe, but definitely is a legitimate approach to the game if you get good at it. Overall, I just feel like the mechanics and how much control I have over the vehicle is better in Mario Kart Wii than it is in 8 Deluxe. Of course, this is a matter of personal opinion, and some of you may feel the opposite way, but I feel like Mario Kart Wii nailed the controls for how karts and bikes should operate in the series. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is unfortunately another victim of the modern video game era, which means the overall difficulty of the game is toned down compared to the titles previous to it. This is evident in numerous aspects, such as the way unlockables are obtained, how strictly Grand Prix are graded, the more forgiving online VR system, and the various factors that affect the race, which I will now explain in further detail. First of all, a very apparent difference between Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has to do with the invincibility frames. In 8 Deluxe, they are significantly longer than in Wii, granting you a longer period of time where you cannot get hit. When you get hit by an item, the game gives you a solid few seconds where you cannot get hit by any subsequent item. This rule applies for all items, even the blue shell. So a common strategy among 8 Deluxe players is to intentionally hit a banana right before the blue shell is about to hit you in order to dodge the blue shell and thus save more time. That is because you lose more time getting hit by a blue shell than just slipping on a banana. Now try that exact same strategy in Mario Kart Wii and tell me how that works out for you. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe gives you a lot of frames where you cannot get hit, which essentially prevents you from getting comboed. That's great when it's you, but pretty cruddy when you're the one trying to hit another player. Regardless of how you think about this change, it makes the game less difficult and more forgiving when it comes to how many items you can get hit by in succession. Next, we got respawn time. Mario Kart Wii is pretty punishing if you fall off a track, as your character falls pretty far down before the screen blacks out and Lakitu respawns you. It's about a 5-second time loss. When you drive off the road in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Lakitu immediately catches you and drops you back on the track in exchange for 3 coins. The time loss is about half of Mario Kart Wii's, clocking in at about 2.5 seconds. Again, this is another change that lowers the difficulty during a race. You are also able to keep your item if you fall off in 8 Deluxe. Meanwhile in Wii, you lose it. That also applies to getting hit by bullets, stars, or course obstacles. You for some reason don't lose your item. But in Wii, if you get hit by any of those things, you instantly lose what you have in your inventory. The off-road is quite different in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe than it is in Mario Kart Wii. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, if you continuously hop, you lose minimal speed in the off-road. That strategy is used quite a bit when it comes to shortcuts or bypassing certain turns. In Mario Kart Wii, you lose practically all of your speed in the off-road. Depending on the kart, of course. You're not able to continue charging your mini turbo for a bit as you could in 8 Deluxe, so there's less incentive to go off-road unless you have a mushroom or other power item. So in turn, that changes a lot how races are played. The next, less forgiving aspect in Mario Kart Wii are the wall physics. Simply put, if you bump into practically anything in Mario Kart Wii, you lose all of your speed and come to a stop. Even clipping the edge of an object can be devastating as it will send you from 100 to 0 in a split second. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and this is one of my biggest grievances of the game, if you bump into an object, you have a chance of being sent 90 degrees in the opposite direction, nearly at full speed. If that doesn't happen to you, you typically don't lose much speed when bumping into a wall, which allows you to recover much easier. Also, when it comes to obstacles in both games, Mario Kart Wii has a much more punishing collision animation, resulting in a longer loss in time. All of these factors point towards Mario Kart 8 Deluxe overall being a more forgiving game than Mario Kart Wii when it comes to accidents players make in a race. Between the quicker respawn time, more invincibility frames, easier off-road, and forgiving walls and obstacles, it cannot be argued that Nintendo didn't intentionally try to make 8 Deluxe a less punishing experience for players, and therefore a less challenging game. But your interpretation to whether that is a good thing or bad thing for the series is up to you and your taste in video games, as well as your thoughts on Nintendo's recent trend of making their games easier and more accessible to appeal to a broader, more casual audience. My 2 cents is I like how Mario Kart Wii is less forgiving and more punishing to the player. That's because I'm a gamer who likes challenge and likes when the games are less accommodating to mistakes. So I like how Mario Kart Wii punishes the player a bit because it's just a larger incentive for me to get better at the game and try harder. Lastly, to screw the cap on my argument, allow me to compare how Mario Kart 8 Deluxe adapted some of the courses that were originally from Wii and the difficulty they removed from it. Let's first start with Wario's Gold Mine since that was in the original 48. Instead of you getting flipped in the air when colliding with a minecart as you would in Mario Kart Wii, they now give you a short boost, which removes a major obstacle from the track. In Coconut Mall, the descending escalators are much less punishing and there is a major indication to which side is the correct side to take. They also removed one car from the end of the track and they overall are easier to avoid. For Koopa Cape, they entirely removed the spinning electric obstacle that would zap you in the pipe section and replaced it with a spin boost pillar, which completely removes the challenge from that section. They also made the last waterfall less intense and not an instant death if you drove on it without a mushroom. I hate to bring up my favorite track in the entire series, but in Moonview Highway, the cars are much slower and there are fewer of them. And just like what I mentioned before, when you hit one, it's a less punishing collision than in Mario Kart Wii. At least they kept the bomb car though. As a little side note, I remember as a kid I'd always refer to the bomb cars as the terrorists, which is something I probably shouldn't have done, but something I thought was funny regardless. I don't know, that's a little piece of trivia about who I am. And lastly, Rainbow Road, which was the last track to come out of the Booster Course bundle. And honestly, Wii's Rainbow Road felt like more of a finale to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe than the game's own Rainbow Road. The track is just that good. I actually really like it in 8 Deluxe, but I did realize them adding extra guardrails and widening the track, which kind of defeats the purpose of Rainbow Road, but that's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for you. This is going to be a bit of a shorter chapter, but I wanted to discuss the difference in shortcuts between the two games, as that is a key part of the game for more experienced players, and definitely an aspect that is very fun to learn. One of my main problems with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, especially before the DLC was introduced, was the huge lack in actual shortcuts on any of the tracks. The only shortcuts that existed were those cheap mini shortcuts where you just cut through a bit of the off-road. That's it. Mario Kart Wii has so many creative shortcuts, both intended by Nintendo or not. Those shortcuts not only took time, but a lot of precision to learn and would benefit you greatly if you can pull it off during a race. Take the Mushroom Gorge Gap Jump for example. It's a pretty precise jump you need to take with a mushroom, but if you master it, that could be the difference between 6th place and 1st place at the end of the race. I can list a whole bunch of those type of shortcuts. Toad's Factory Lake Cut, DK Summit Single and Double Cut, Grumble Volcano Rock Hop, Delfino Square Dock Cut, and the Bowser's Castle 3 Corner Skip for example. And that doesn't even cover the glitch shortcuts, which will be a whole nother chapter. All of these shortcuts require some or a lot of practice to perform, and they skip a significant portion of the track, and if you're the only one in the lobby who knows how to pull them off, the reward is extremely worth it. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe unfortunately doesn't have these types of creative shortcuts in the game, at least until they somewhat learn their lesson with the DLC. That's because of what the game deems out of bounds, and 8 Deluxe is not very flexible with that. On many tracks in 8 Deluxe, if you even go 1 inch off the track in an attempt to try to skip something, Lakitu immediately grabs you and puts you back on the track. The game really isn't too flexible or creative when it comes to allowing players to explore outside of the track, which is very much a shame. Fortunately, the DLC gave you a little more flexibility with shortcuts, but nothing to the extent Mario Kart Wii did. I like when games allow you to explore and try out things for yourself, and I feel like that's what Mario Kart Wii did really well. And again, all of those shortcuts in Mario Kart Wii adds to a completely new layer of the game. Being able to calculate whether it's worth it or not to take that big risk and attempt the shortcut is something crucial to experienced players. It gives you something to practice and get better at if you want to best your friends or opponents online, and really contributes to the more skill-dependent approach Mario Kart Wii has over Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Okay, so this is probably the most personal and subjective argument I'm about to make, because objectively speaking, more glitches shouldn't equal a better game, but Mario Kart Wii has so many fun and completely broken glitches in the game. Between glitches that let you go entirely out of bounds to the many infamous ultra shortcuts in the game, Mario Kart Wii can be turned inside out when it comes to breaking the game. First of all, there are a lot of instances where you can drive completely out of bounds. The most infamous one you may know is in Coconut Mall, where you then can drive around the parking lot to complete a lap in mere seconds. You can also glitch your way out of bounds in Koopa Cape and in Maple Treeway, although it doesn't have much practical use. But if you really want to finish races quickly, you can hop on this rock at the beginning of Grumble Volcano, drive around it 3 times, and boom, race finished. On Mushroom Gorge, you can boost yourself off this mushroom and ride along the mountain to skip all the key checkpoints and finish a lap in only a few seconds. Same with Wario's Gold Mine. Just shroom onto this pipe, fly back up on the track, touch the key checkpoint, drive back to the finish line, and there's your lap. Now, I'm not going to list every single shortcut in the game, but you get the point. This game can be completely and utterly broken to the point where players have learned how to complete a lap in just a couple seconds. I'll briefly explain why that's the case for those who are unfamiliar. Mario Kart Wii uses many checkpoints to keep track of where you, the racer, are at any given time. The checkpoints are triggered when you are within its area. There are 2 types of checkpoints, regular checkpoints and key checkpoints. Regular checkpoints determine factors like where you respawn when you fall off, but the key checkpoints determine whether to give you a lap count or not. So that's why you can't just drive around the finish line in order to complete a lap. Typically, you're supposed to pass each checkpoint chronologically in order for the lap to count. At least that's how it's intended to work, but as long as you skip the first checkpoint, also known as checkpoint 0, the game won't know where you are on the track. So what you can do is not cross the first checkpoint and somehow glitch your way past it into the last checkpoint, and when you drive past the last checkpoint, the game thinks you already drove the full length of the track and grants you the lap count. I know the mechanics of checkpoints in Mario Kart Wii are a lot more detailed and specific than that, but I wanted to give just a brief overview of why these huge shortcuts work. What I'll do is throw on screen every single track and ultra shortcut as possible so you can see the pure magnitude to which this game is broken. I would really love to go on and on about every glitch and ultra shortcut in this game, but if I did, we'd be here for another 2 hours. So I guess what I want you to take away from this chapter is the amount of fun fans have had completely breaking this game. It's so cool the amount of things the community has discovered and still is discovering to this day, and it's really fun to boot up the game and have a good time attempting these glitches and ultra shortcuts. Broken games don't always mean a bad game. Think of Mario 64, for example. One of the reasons why people absolutely love 64 is because of the BLJ. It's the most notorious thing from that game and one of the most well-known glitches in gaming history. It's so fun to attempt yourself, much like any other glitch in that game, and is what keeps the community fresh. Many people's favorite thing about video games are its glitches. Let's switch the script here and be fair to both Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Mario Kart Wii, because there are many things that 8 Deluxe does slightly or a lot better than Wii, and it wouldn't be fair for me to sweep those under the rug in order to make Wii look better. First, just the quantity. I know 8 Deluxe is a newer game with a longer shelf time, but the fact that the game has 96 tracks, 48 playable characters, and dozens of customizable vehicle parts should not be overlooked. That is absolutely massive. In fact, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has Wii's entire roster of characters in all but 5 of its tracks. Nintendo really did put their all into this game and made sure that players were spoiled with content and options to choose from. It's incredible how many obscure characters I can play as, while also being able to experience older tracks in a modernized and revamped fashion. Next, Battle Mode in Mario Kart Wii kinda sucked, and the beloved Mission Mode from Mario Kart DS wasn't in the main game. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, however, has an amazing Battle Mode. I wish there were more than 8 maps, but all 8 of them are very fun and unique to play on. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has more than just Balloon Battle and Coin Runners, something Mario Kart Wii is limited to. Instead, it also has Bomb on Blast, Renegade Roundup, and my favorite, Shine Thief, which really adds to the variety and longevity of this mode. All 5 of those games are really fun to play and cycle between, making for hours of fun online or with friends. It's a nice refresher away from racing for first, and a way to just have silly, chaotic fun with a bunch of items just like the game intended. Third, let's address the elephant in the room. Mario Kart Wii is extremely unbalanced. If you already couldn't tell, all karts and outside drifting bikes are completely obsolete if you want to go competitive. Inside drifting bikes, specifically the Flame Runner and Mach Bike, rule this game and are really the only 2 viable options out of the dozens to choose from. That is why when you hop online, all you see is Funky Kong Flame Runner because that is the best character paired with the best vehicle. Now, I know Mario Kart 8 Deluxe does have a meta. I mean, Yoshi Teddy Buggy is everywhere, but it is way more balanced than Wii ever was. If you want to race with your wacky combo, you still can, and it won't be as hard for you to place well as it would be in Wii. But you at least have some degree of freedom in 8 Deluxe and don't have to run with the same combo everyone else is using for a chance of doing well in a higher skill lobby. And that plays well into my last point. Yes, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe does require a lot of skill and knowledge of the tracks as well. There, of course, is a very competitive scene in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that requires a lot of tech with driving the tracks and with items. There are certain tracks where it is more optimal to bag for power items and use them at ending shortcuts. I personally don't like that style of play, but that doesn't make them any less skillful or practical on those tracks. There are a lot of various shortcuts or ways to drive a certain part of the track as fast as possible that require very frame-specific inputs to achieve, and I don't want this video to take away from that. So yes, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is also very skill-dependent, but less so than Mario Kart Wii in my opinion. Lastly, Mario Kart Wii's main method of control is motion controls. However, you can instead play the game with a nunchuck, classic controller, or GameCube controller. But Nintendo didn't communicate that well enough to casual players, so many didn't even know that was an option for them in the first place. So that's more the fault of Nintendo for not advertising the other controller options enough to customers, because most people just didn't like motion controls in general. I've talked to a lot of very casual Nintendo fans who didn't even know that you can play the game without motion controls, which speaks to how poor of a job Nintendo did informing people about that. Okay, those are all the main points I wanted to hit in this video. Of course, I can expand on any or all of them, but I wanted to make sure that none of my arguments lingered on for too long. However, if I'm missing something that you have in mind, feel free to mention it in the comments. One last thing that I didn't mention that is weird about 8 Deluxe is that for each online race, you can only vote for 1 of 3 randomly selected tracks. In every other Mario Kart, you're able to vote for any track you want in the game. Always thought that was odd. But I'm not the only one who shares these mentioned opinions, as the Mario Kart Wii community is extremely large and active, even in 2025. I haven't directly mentioned it yet, but there are so many fan expansions of Mario Kart Wii, such as CTGP and Retro Rewind, that allow you to play hundreds of custom tracks, and you can still even play the game online today. Nintendo's online servers for the Wii have been discontinued since May 20th of 2014, but fans have made their own server through Weamfi that have been active ever since the normal servers shut down. Think of it, Nintendo servers only lasted 8 years until discontinued, and Weamfi has been active for 11 years and counting, so a longer lifespan than even Nintendo. This just shows how active and passionate this community is about a very cherished game, which is reflective of how good the game actually is. If you want to download any of these expansions, I'll be sure to leave a link to them in the description below. Overall, I really do believe Mario Kart Wii is the best game of the series. What primarily draws me to Mario Kart Wii over Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or any other modern Mario Kart game is the mechanics. I like the driving a lot better, and the controls just feel right to me. One other thing that really repels me away from 8 Deluxe is the overabundance of items in that game. I always feel like I'm getting hit by something random every 5 seconds, and the amount of red shells in that game is criminal. I never feel like I can breathe when I play 8 Deluxe, and I'm always asking myself, what the hell just hit me? But I know those are issues that may not be too much of a concern to other people, and I know a lot of people who really love 8 Deluxe and think Mario Kart is only getting better. It really comes down to preference, and my preference is the handling and feels of Mario Kart Wii, but I feel like the arguments I brought up were fair criticisms of why 8 Deluxe isn't all that. But if you have significant experience in 8 Deluxe and would like to weigh in, feel free to disagree with any of my arguments I made. But as of right now, I feel pretty confident in saying that Wii is definitely superior to 8 Deluxe. Finally, I didn't really want to have to say this, but it was a bit of an issue with my Sunshine video. If you disagree at all with myself or anyone else in the comments, please be respectful about it. I saw a lot of insults and rude behavior in my last video, which I don't tolerate here, so I ask to keep any and all disagreements civil, please. I'm gonna end the video here, so thank you guys so much for watching as always, and let me know what you thought about this type of video. This game has always been a passion of mine, so I'm really glad I was able to compile everything I really felt strongly about into a video. I'm not gonna cut a copy of 8 Deluxe in half like I did with Mario Sunshine, because I still do respect the game a little bit, but if it decides it wants to screw with me, then maybe I'll change my mind. Well guys, take care, God bless, and best of luck playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because you'll definitely need it instead of skill. Alright, now screw off everyone.